Chair now lays out House Bill 1275 and recognizes Representative Blesa to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Guillen, Vice Chair Johnson, and members of the committee for considering this legislation and providing me an opportunity to lay out House Bill 1275 before you. It is the honor of my life to sit before you today to lay out my very first bill, a bill that was brought to me by one of my very own constituents. I'm grateful to be able to work on this piece of legislation with my district neighbor, Representative Matt Shaheen, and I thank Senator Hughes for filing this bill in the Senate. Everyone in this room has some form of government issue ID. Most people probably have a driver's license that they use for a variety of day-to-day tasks. If you're at the grocery store buying a bottle of wine, if you're at the craft store and want to buy a can of spray paint, you could be picking up prescriptions from the pharmacy. These are just a few of the routine things that we all do that requires a photo ID. But it's not always simple for everyone. It's not always easy for our senior citizens. Currently, once a senior is no longer able to drive, they can voluntarily surrender their driver's license, but they will continue to need state-issued identification after leaving the driver's seat. Right now, a senior citizen would need to physically go to the DPS office to surrender their driver's license and secure a non-driver's license photo identification card. Surrendering a driver's license can be emotional, it can be frustrating, it can be logistically challenging, you would need to arrange transportation, and it can take weeks to get a DPS appointment. For someone no longer able to drive, this means they will need to arrange transportation from a family member or a caregiver. Someone will need to take time, arrangements, childcare, and otherwise find the time to spend a few hours at the DPS. What HB 1275 does, allows DPS to adopt procedures to allow seniors to apply for a personal identification certificate online or by phone if they voluntarily surrender their driver's license through the DPS prescribed procedures. House Bill 1275 will make this process more efficient and convenient for senior citizens and allow them to age with dignity and maintain a sense of independence. It will alleviate the burden off of their caretakers, many of which are their children, those caught in what we call the sandwich generation. They are caring for their young children at the same time as caring for their aging parents. It will also reduce the wait times at our DPS offices. I would like to take a few seconds to clarify what House Bill 1275 does not do. It does not change the identity verification or security measures required to obtain a driver's license or ID. A senior citizen seeking ID under this bill will still have to meet all eligibility requirements under existing law. They will still have to prove that they are lawfully present and otherwise eligible for a Texas ID. DPS will continue to have discretion over the fines and fees assessed, and they will also have discretion over the procedures and implementation of House Bill 1275. Now, members, I want to be transparent with you. I was in shock when I got the fiscal note late last night on this bill. We were not anticipating this bill to have a cost associated with it, much less what the LBB has determined. I have been working with DPS all day to identify what is driving the cost. We have come to a resolution. I will be introducing a committee sub on this bill that adds clarifying language as it relates to the compliance with federal laws, and the substitute will substantially lower the fiscal implication to the state. Right now, the cost is associated with creating a web portal, and the committee sub will alleviate some of that. Members, this bill is extremely important to me and those in my district, as well as throughout Texas. My constituent brought this bill to me and is here today, all the way from Plano, Texas, to testify before you in this committee. The bill will help seniors all across our state age with dignity and maintain a sense of independence, as well as the caretakers that take care of them. We have some witnesses, including the resource witness from DPS, who can answer any questions. And with that, I thank you for your consideration and reserve my right to close.
Members, any questions? Yep. Vice Chairman Jarvis Johnson.
How are you, Representative Plessa? What you said something about who's eligible to get an ID? Did you say that?
Right.
I know you were trying to make sure that people were comfortable, but I was.
Right. So I just want to make sure that people understand that this does not change how people become eligible for applying for a legal ID. It doesn't change the federal requirements. It doesn't change anything. All this essentially does is it lets our seniors who want to voluntarily give up their driving privileges renew their license for just an ID card, not a driver's license. So they're going to be able to
It's
do
just for
that
senior
online.
citizens, though, right?
Yes,
This is just senior citizens,
just 65 and older.
65 and up.
Yeah.
That want to give up their ID.
That for whatever reason are not driving anymore. They do not need a driver's license. They just need an identification card.
Right.
And so this actually makes it not just easier for our seniors, but the people that are taking care of our seniors. Usually it's their children. And so these children are usually taking care of their aging parents and their kids, right? So they're having to take time from their busy schedules, take time off work, find childcare to help their aging parents get identification. And what this creates is just a streamlined process for that.
It's the same thing that when if I get a renewal or whatever, they'll just
That's-
mail me my renewal, right?
Absolutely, sir.
It'd
And
be
that
the same thing.
and we're going to be using that same web portal, and that's what's going to bring down the cost. Right now, the way that the bill is written, there was a little bit of confusion as to the creation of a new web portal. That will not be needed. And so after working with DPS, we will be reducing that fiscal note. I was shocked. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm shocked too. I mean, there's a range of 1.8 to 5.5, so that's what I was.
And it will be
I know they
under,
already send me my ID whenever I need, whenever I need a renewal or a loss. It just, I go online, they send it right back. So I was a little confused as to why. Yes, high fiscal note.
yes, sir. And so after speaking to DPS, we did clarify that. And so we're assuming that the fiscal note will actually be way under 500,000.
Members, any other questions? Representative Durazio.
Thank you so much for testifying. I like this bill.
Thank you.
I really like this bill. Do you have a DPS officer you said was going to tell us the process?
Yes,
Okay.
I do have a resource witness here, as well as other constituencies and other people that are testifying in favor of this bill.
All right, thank you.
Members, any other questions? We'll call you back up.
Thank you so much.
Chair now calls Mike Taylor. We have you registered as Mike Taylor, representing yourself, testifying in favor of the bill. Is that accurate?
That's partially accurate, Chairman.
Okay.
The other half is I'm one of your Texas Silver-haired legislators, and I represent Tarrant County. Also have a constituent, a colleague here, Gary Gerstenhaber, who is here in the Capital District.
Okay, so, but let's clear that up. Are you also representing Texas Silver Hair Legislature?
This is one and the same today, yes, sir.
Okay, so we're going to add that to the record here.
Your questionnaire out there, well, I started with silver hair, and it said, do you also represent as an individual? And I do, because I'm over 65.
That'll work. Please proceed.
Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, to be here and speak to you on this issue. This was a citizen-driven initiative. I had hosted a morning breakfast for Senator Beverly Powell and Representative Giovanni Capriglione approximately 2 years ago. And after that, a man that's a competitor of mine came up and introduced me to his wife, says she's going to tear your ear off. And she just unloaded on the punitive nature she felt of having to get her 92-year-old father. He still had a valid Texas driver's license, but he just wanted to change it to a valid Texas ID. And it was like 1 minute we knew him for 50 years of driving in Texas, and the next minute, who the heck are you? And it became something that required his birth certificate, which had burned in the particular jurisdiction he had it in many, many decades ago. And so I talked to Giovanni Capriglione, Representative Capriglione, about it. He said, Mike, there's your resolution. So I spent a year asking questions in town halls and meetings and what have you, and every time I asked the question, there was not one positive response to getting a Texas driver's license, just walking in and having it converted to a Texas ID. And of course, you don't do this every day, you do it every month, you don't do it every year. You only do it, as the vice chair said, whenever you go on, every 16 years, I think it is, I can do it online, but then I've got to go in and I've got to get my ugly mug shot so you know I've aged out. And so that's what brought it to this. So when looking at it, found out that statistically, even through Quantico, the FBI, the DPS, whether it's your local jurisdiction, that particular demographic of 70 and up is not really a statistical issue when it comes to crime nor terrorism. So in looking at that, it became obvious we have now also had, by your legislature, the voter ID bills. So we've got a cat and mouse game going on here, and the whole ideal is to make it less punitive on those people who want to do what we as motorists in Texas want them to do. When it's time to get off the road, if you've gone through that with your parents or a loved one, you'll find out that's a loss of independence, and they fight it sometimes when they probably know it's in their best interest. We all know it's in the motorist's best interest, the motoring Texans. So that's the reason I authored this is Resolution R031 in our May session last year, which was in our legislative report we filed with you guys at the end of September for your session this time. So we're asking the 88th session to look at this. There are ways to do it, and I want to compliment Representative Plessa and her staff because they went down and found out what some of the other reps already said. Well, we've already passed this a few sessions ago in the bill. We've solved this problem, Mike. And come to find out there was something missing, and even the DPS staff itself said, no, we need some help here. I'm asking you as one of your Silvers, and I'm also asking you as one of your citizens to give this strong consideration. We would appreciate your consideration on it and your affirmative vote. Thank you, committee.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Thank you, sir. Chair now calls Jerry Chambers. We have you registered as Jerry Chambers, representing yourself in favor of the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Please proceed.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you this afternoon. My name is Jerry Chambers. I'm a native Texan and a resident of the city of Plano. In the state of Texas, in order to convert a Texas driver's license to a valid Texas ID, the person has to go into the DPS office to make the change, especially if their Texas driver's license has expired, which is what happened for me with my mother. When you get to the office, they take a picture, you sign a document, and you pay a fee. All good and easy, except when your 87-year-old mother has Alzheimer's, has recently broken her pelvis, and you have to transport her to be physically engaged for this. I called the DPS, I told them the situation, and I asked for accommodations. And they said that in order to do a house visit, they will do an in-person visit. And they literally said that the patient, the client, had to be attached to medical equipment 24 hours a day to be able to have that accommodation. That I had to take my mom in physically to get this ID updated. So, I began asking questions, doing some research. At the time, my representative was Matt Shaheen, and so I picked up the phone and called Representative Shaheen and said, help. And he said, let's look into this. And he came back to me and said, yep, you're right, this is a problem. And then we had an election, and I now have Representative Plessa, and I talked to her, and she was willing to file this bill, and I'm very grateful for that. What I have learned that I didn't know before is that you have to have a valid ID to be admitted to a hospital. You have to have a valid ID to apply for Medicaid. You have to have a valid ID to file your taxes. My husband just filed taxes for my mother, and I had to give the origination date and when the expiration date was for her ID to be able to file her taxes. So her expired license was not going to work. And then I've also talked to my estate attorney and found out that when you die, in order to probate your will, you have to have a valid ID present at the probate of the will. So I'm very fortunate that on the day that my mom, I made an appointment, we were able to get her into our car. I was able to take a day off of work. My husband was able to take off lunch because there was no way I could transport her by myself. She's a large woman, and she clearly had been in pain from the pelvis. I also had to anticipate what her attitude was going to be. As an Alzheimer's patient, I don't know what kind of mom I'm going to get when I show up at her residential facility to be able to work with her. But it worked for me, and it worked for us this time. But I'm just concerned about the other citizens and our other elders in our community, about how we can make this transition from a valid driver's license to a valid Texas ID, and still give dignity to our seniors who clearly need it. So, thank you, and I'll take your questions.
Members, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the opportunity to talk.
Chair now calls Katie Phelps. We have you registered as Katie Phelps, representing Uncommon Care, testifying in favor of the bill. Is that correct?
Yes. Hi.
Please proceed.
Thank you guys for having us here today to support this bill. As you mentioned, I work for Uncommon Care, Alzheimer's Care. I've had the honor of working in long-term care for 15 years, mostly specializing in Alzheimer's and hospice care. Our communities currently, we serve the Georgetown, Plano, and Sugar Land communities, and this is a problem across all of our Texas facilities. As Jerry stated before, many of our adult children have to take off work, go and take their loved one that they have already placed into a memory care facility to the DPS and go through that entire process. Many times, adult children, if you guys are like me, we don't take on our parents' responsibilities until we really realize it's time. And so having that conversation is already hard. And now we are asking them to go in front of, in a public area where we don't know what their behaviors are going to be. Are they going to have delusions? Are we going to have medication issues? Are we going to have incontinence issues to deal with? And in our case, a lot of those adult children have placed them in our care so that we can provide those ADLs that they need on a regular basis. This process does not allow dignity and independence for someone that has already made a decision with their adult children in the privacy of their own homes or in their own meeting to now have to go and do that again. We all come from parents. We all have in-laws or loved ones, grandparents, and those will be us one day. That we are sitting at the DMV trying to get our license turned back in so that we can get that identification card. I just urge you guys to really take that into consideration and make this process easier for our seniors.
Members, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there somebody else? Also from Uncommon Care? Chair calls Megan Himes. We have you registered as Megan Himes, representing Uncommon Care, testifying in favor of the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Please proceed.
I'm so grateful to be here today. I have a close relationship with Jerry as I care for her mother. I've been a nurse for 20 years and work as the administrator at Bader House Memory Care in Plano. And I have witnessed firsthand how difficult it can be for residents with dementia to leave their familiar surroundings and go out in public. Older adults with dementia can often become overstimulated by sounds, crowded areas, and unfamiliar places. In my profession, we bring everything to the dementia resident to prevent this from happening. When a dementia resident becomes overstimulated, they can act out with aggressive behaviors and even try to leave the situation. This is not only a dignity issue, but a safety concern. I recently had a resident being transported by his wife attempt to jump out of the vehicle, which ended up with her being physically aggressive towards his wife, injuring her. Countless times, family members have brought their loved ones with dementia back to the community after being out in public, and they were soiled with incontinence. My father is handicapped due to chronic back issues, and it's very difficult for my mother to take him out of the house in a wheelchair due to his size. Every doctor's appointment presents a challenge just to simply leave the house. Younger generations are now falling into the ranks of the sandwich generation, taking care of their children and their parents at the same time. Families and caregivers need a clear and simple path to gaining ID access for those who are unable to do so for themselves, so that their health care, financial, and personal wishes can be carried out in a timely manner. Passing this bill would maintain their dignity and minimize the stress on the older adults and caregivers.
Members, any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a resource witness here. Chair calls Linda Boline, Texas Department of Public Safety. We have you registered as Linda Boline, representing the Texas Department of Public Safety, testifying on the bill. Is that correct?
Correct.
I've got a question. So, 2 sessions ago, I passed House Bill 2092 with the help of my esteemed colleagues. And it was directing DPS to come up with a process to do what we're talking about in this bill. And apparently, I guess it didn't get done. Can you?
I know nothing about that bill, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If I'd been able to do some homework, I'd have been glad to do it, but
And so
aware of it.
Representative Holland had a bill, a very similar bill, the same session, that he got passed and went to the governor's desk and got vetoed. Precisely because of the passage of my bill. And so anyway, to now find out that we still have a problem is, concerning. And so I guess as we go forward with this bill, I want to make sure that this is going to, actually take care of the issue. And so let's talk about the fiscal note. So obviously, the Representative Blesa mentioned that she's talked to you guys about it, and I guess there was a little bit of confusion as to whether a new website or something like that was going to have to be created. Can you talk a little bit about that?
sure. The work that, the programming that we do is through the Department of Information Resources. We asked them to give us an estimate of what a portal to submit the documents, the photo, how much that would cost, and that was their range of estimate, the 1.8 to 5.5.
And so if, depending on how the bill is worded, is there a way to go forward with the concept of this bill without having to build a new portal?
What we talked about earlier today was eliminating the portal and having a web service to where Real ID compliant individuals who have already been vetted and have all of their documents with their DL, that they could just use those documents and then use the current photo and turn it into an ID or get the ID instead.
Okay. Vice Chair Johnson.
Thank you. I'm a little confused by the range, because I do know that when I do some work on my house or something like that, they're pushed out. I know there may be a range because prices change. I don't understand how prices can change 3 times the amount, though. I mean, if I go and buy a wood fence, and my God, wood went up, but
I get you.
by the time you bring me the invoice, it's 3 times the amount. That's a heck of a range.
While the Department of Information Resources gives us those estimates, it could depend on I guess, a Volkswagen model or the Cadillac. And that may be where they're getting, because they're, without knowing all the details of the programming that would need to be done, that's what they offer.
Just to simply say, I don't want to renew, use this same picture and send me my ID.
Well, with that is what we discussed today, and we wouldn't have to have that portal. And I expect that, based off of the web service that we have right now, some of the programming that we've recently done, it would be just probably under $500,000 is what we're estimating.
So we'll go, let's try to do 100,000 to 500,000. Make the number even smaller, so it looks more attractive. How about that?
There you go.
Because it could be 100,000,
We'll talk
with
to
the maximum being 500, but I think it may look better to all of the voting members that, oh, it's just a little small amount.
We'll, we'll work with both the author and y'all's office
Sure.
to prepare a sub. But HB 2092
We'll look
from a
at it.
couple of sessions ago
Yeah.
had zero fiscal note, and I'd like to try to have that conversation sometime between now and when we move forward about why that one would have a zero fiscal note and this one would have some kind of a fiscal note. Do we? No, I'm good. We're good? And any other questions? Yeah, we'll revisit it. And members, any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify, I am speaking on the record is for the Texas Silver-Haired Legislature. I'm not
And
just making
yourself.
a report for them, and myself, but it's primarily, it was a unanimous vote in our session for this.
We got you down as representing the silver-haired legislature, and that was, what was your name?
I'm Mike Taylor, sir.
That was Mike Taylor, yes. Representing the Texas Silver-Haired Legislature and yourself. We do have that correct. All right. Anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against House Bill 1275? There being none, Chair recognizes Representative Plesa. It's Plesa, not Plesha, right? Or-
Either is fine.
Too close.
Thank you, members. As many of you already know and have stated, this is a common yet complicated problem with a simple solution, the passage of House Bill 1275. Thank you, Chair Guillen, and members of this committee for considering this bill. Thank you, Vice Chair Johnson, for joint authoring this bill. If there are no further questions, I ask for your vote. Thank you for working with me on the committee sub, and I close.
Members, any other questions? All right. Yes, Representative Bowers.
Congratulations, Representative Plesa, on laying out your first bill, and I'm glad it was in our committee. I just want to say, with explanation and understanding on the fiscal note, I'm certainly glad to support and we'll be ready to co-author it for sure.
Thank you, Representative Bowers. It's an honor to present my first bill in front of your committee. You are one of my mentors, and it was an honor to work for you.
Thank you.
All right. If there's no objection, House Bill 1275 will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. House Bill 1275 is left pending.